Hi there, ladies and gentlemen. Hi there out in internet land. Welcome to the Reasonably Fine Art Talk of December 1st, 2021. Now, this is a first, ladies and gentlemen. This is a first. My beloved, the great Betty Sue, is winging her way currently from Austin, Texas, up to the Northeast. And so I am on my own. She is not backstage pulling the strings. Um, I am, she's given me a tutorial on what to do, and I will be attempting to pull the strings myself. So the topic today, I thought, would be about the plein air circuit, because I get people ask me a lot about it, about what what whether it would be right for them, because I know a lot of the people, most of the people who watch this are painters, many aspiring plein air painters. And I guess the first thing that people always ask about is, well, it's a competition, and the idea of painting as competition is really not very appealing. A lot of people, were in the corporate world and stuff during their careers and have taken up painting in retirement. And the idea of flinging themselves back into a competitive atmosphere is not necessarily what their idea of a good time. Well, my first thing I want to say about that is that I was a little terrified of that as well. I got my start doing plein air in 2010 when I think I've told the story of this. Is it 29 or 2010? Richard Schmid and Ro Ladd and Dennis Sheehan and Laurie Woodward and a couple of other people sat me down and said, you should get out nationally. And Kathy Anderson told me about the plein air circuit, and that sounded exciting. And Laurie Woodward told me about the Publishers Invitational in the Adirondacks, and that sounded exciting. And of course, like any of us, of course, I didn't think I was good enough to participate in any of that. That inner voice that tells us that we're unworthy is one of the biggest hurdles to get over. And I don't think I would have gotten over it were it not for Schmid and Sheehan and Rowe and Nancy and just all these people saying, no, you're really good. So for those of you who don't have Richard Schmid buying you a beer and telling you're a very, very good painter, I am here to tell you you are worthy. You have a vision, and you should pursue it. Now, that does mean sketching all the time, and it does mean practicing. Your vision does not count for beans unless you're doing that. But anyway, in 2009, let us say it's 2009, I learned about this exciting world. And in 2010, I found out that there was a plein air event at that time in Bennington, Vermont, called, I believe it was called Bennington Plein Air. And they had the usual thing of invited, there were the invited artists, and then there was an open quick paint. And I, of course, was unknown at that time, so I just went to the open quick paint. And I was so nervous, ladies and gentlemen. I was so very, very nervous. Let's see, I'm going to try putting a slide up here. I believe by clicking on this. Yes. And let's go to the next slide. Yes, there we are. Look, that worked. I was sitting in my car and getting ready for the quick paint. And I had my little sketchbook. And I was like, okay, I'm going to sketch out what I'm going to do first. And so I was sitting in the car, did this sketch, and then did the, so this is probably about a 6 by, maybe a 5 by 10, just a little pencil sketch, little value sketch. And then I did the painting. And this painting was 16 by 32, which is pretty damn big for a quick draw. But you'll notice there's actually very little detail in it. It's just, kind of a big wash, big shapes with little shapes cut out of it. And that won the quick draw. And what I remember from that is I'll go back to the big screen. What I remember from that is Hulai Chong, who I had never met before, but turning to me and saying, you're very good. I was very pleased because she was like a star, you know. And I think that was the time I had the greatest fear of competition, of the plein air events were overwhelmed with the competitive aspect. What I very quickly learned is that it really, the competition part isn't part of what one thinks about during the event, or at least I don't, and the artists who I hang out with. We aren't like thinking, I'm going to win. It's a very supportive group, and everyone hopes that everyone else does well. In fact, my favorite plein air event is, or my favorite way about in terms of awards, that you know, everybody is always hunting for or everyone thinks that you're always hunting for the awards. Though I think it's a fool's errand to paint for a specific prize. Just paint what moves you, you know. But at Forgotten Coast Plein Air in Apalachicola, Florida, there's only one prize. And in Sonoma, California, there's only one prize. And that prize is the artist's choice, who the artists feel did either the best painting or the best body of work during the event. In my perfect world, that's how all the events would be. But the reality is that many of the events have very significant cash prizes attached to them. A lot of them have a mix of cash prizes and, you know, a half-page ad in Plein Air magazine. But that's, you know, Plein Air magazine gets in front of a lot of eyeballs, and those ads aren't cheap. But there are, I believe, a number of painters, especially in kind of the two quote unquote top plein air events in the country, which I would say are Laguna and EASTON. There are people who I do think are painting to try to win awards. And that's not really my Jones. I did try to win one award once. There was a Plein Air EASTON did a event. They got someone to underwrite a thing called Imagine Two Futures, and the two futures were solar panels or soybean fields, or, you know, agricultural fields. It turned out the guy who was underwriting it really didn't like solar panels and wanted to show how awful solar panels were. I liked solar panels, so I did a painting of the solar panels. I didn't win. So there I was painting for the award. Didn't pan out for me. Let's see. I'm just checking the comments. Yeah. So June Finnegan did her first quick draws past March at Forgotten Coast. She was excited, but also a nervous wreck. Yes, that is normal. You are going to be a nervous wreck the first time you do it. I would suggest that wherever you are, find out what the nearest plein air event is that is either an open event, i.e. not juried, or has an open quick draw where you just pay $10 to register if you've never done one of these events before. That's a wonderful way of dipping your feet in the water. However, as the downside of that is it does make you think more about the competitive aspect because you're trying to get discovered. And that's just the trade-off. We're in a perfect world. I would look for the event near you that is open, i.e. is anybody can participate in. So you don't have to be competitive initially of, am I going to get in? And then once you're in it, just paint for 5 days and just enjoy the community of fellow artists. I have found that the most fulfilling part of doing these plein air events. And it was a large reason why I still do them. Now, my subtitle for today was Don't Tell Anybody Anything, because then you start missing everybody, which is, of course, the final line in Catcher in the Rye, but Holden Caulfield's last great bit of advice. And to me, as I was assembling these slides, it became clear to me that these people who I paint with now are really dear friends. I am honored to be part of this community. And that has sort of been the biggest gift that I have been given from doing these. And that was not what I was thinking about at the beginning. At the beginning, I was thinking about, oh, I want to get known out in the world. This next slide, yes, won the Vanishing Landscape Award at EASTON in 2012. So I did that event in Vermont. I won the quick draw. That gave me the confidence boost to apply to EASTON. In 2011, I did EASTON for the first time. And at age 50, I won Best New Artist. And I figured that if at age 50, you can be the best new anything, that's pretty darn good. In 2012, I came back, and this was a day painting with Dick Sneary, and I forget who else, but there were like 4 of us painting this lift bridge. And I remember that day. I remember what the air felt like. I remember feeling so honored to be accepted by these artists who I respected. That's, as I say, that has been the biggest gift that I didn't know I was going to get from doing this. And this is one of the things why I would like to encourage you guys to do plein air events, is the community, because we're all isolated when we're painting by ourselves. And a plein air event is the chance to go out and be with others of our tribe for a few days. This was in 2014. This was my quick paint entrance for EASTON. And this one won the best, won the first prize for quick paint with Peter Trippy, editor of Fine Arts Connoisseur, which I like to call Fine Rats Connoisseur. I wrote a little poem. It said, Peter Trippy likes the paintings that are drippy. But in reality, he doesn't. He likes big blue paintings. But this one, I think he was impressed that I got as much kind of depth of field as I did in a 2-hour period. I really love the quick paints, which seems like the grossest thing imaginable. That, because it is competitive. It is, what can you do? And you do have a clock ticking. But I love and that's part of why I work monochromatically. I love having to distill reality into a story in 2 hours, 2 or 3 hours. Anyway, this one I was pretty proud of. It's too bad that I don't have a very good photograph of it. Now I got to check the comments again a second. Hey, Julie Fulton, how are you? And Corey says it can be very intimidating, especially when top and master artists are present. My goal has just been not to embarrass myself. Yes, and that is why, ladies and gentlemen, your daily practice of the sketch pad, 20 minutes a day, at least 3 days a week, that is what's going to pay off hugely, and you will not embarrass yourself. Also, don't swing for the fences. Just try to get on base. Just hit a single or bunt or whatever. One of my favorite stories about the late painter Greg LaRocque was that I was underneath a bridge and in Apalachicola, Florida, at Forgotten Coast a few years ago, and I was trying to paint a epic painting. And Greg pulled up in his truck next to me and said, "How's it going?" I said, "I'm swinging for the fences and I'm whiffing." He just looked at me and said, "Well then, bunt." So I bunted. I did a decent little painting. It's good advice. This is Sonoma in 2014. This is just one of my favorite plein air paintings. And part of the gift of plein air, of a plein air event, is that you do have to keep producing paintings. It makes you, produce. You have to be coming up with this stuff. And my goal, what I've tried to do, is I try to do a morning painting and an afternoon painting. I go out I'm not an early riser. I'm not. If I get up too early, I feel kind of exhausted and gross all day. So I get up, I have my coffee, I do my leg exercises, and then I go out and paint. Then I get lunch, and then I come back and take a nap. And then I go out and do a late in the day painting. And I do that for 5 days. And at the end of 5 days, I've got 10 paintings. And that's pretty amazing to me. And sometimes they come together really well. This painting I did, it was a huge tree outside of Sonoma. I did not like it at the time. I was annoyed. I came back to the headquarters, and Jason Sacran saw this painting and was like, "I have to have that painting." He never let me put it on sale. He insisted. I believe he purchased it, or it was partially purchased, and then we did a trade as well. But I was so honored that Jason Sacran immediately wanted this painting. Because Jason was the it boy at that moment in time, and he's such a great painter with such a great eye, as well as being one of the nicest human beings on planet Earth. So I traded with him, and I look at this now, and I love this painting now. Didn't like it when I did it, love it now. And again, I work monochromatically because by eliminating having to worry about chroma, I can concentrate on the shapes, the edges, the composition. I now look at this and I say, that's a darn good painting. Arrogant, arrogant. Next one. This is called Mortal City. And I threw this in because this is Jerome, Arizona. I did the Sedona plein air event for several years. Never sold very well there, but love painting Jerome, which is an old mining town up on the literal side of a mountain. And the name for this came from a Dar Williams song. And long ago, in a different lifetime, I managed Dar Williams when I was a music manager. And her second album was called Mortal City. And this is a bank that is just a facade now. The building is nothing but a shell. And to my delight, a few years ago, Dar ended up buying this painting. So Dar has Mortal City in her home. Maybe she has it in her garage. I don't know. I'd like to think she has it in her home. Now, one of the things that I do not love about plein air events is that at the end, you gotta sit there while the sales are going on. And at Sedona, I think it was like, it's 2 or 3 days, but it's long. It's like 4 hours each time. And I just get so sick of being in that room with the paintings. I stopped doing Sonoma because Sonoma makes you sit in a booth in a park with your paintings and try to sell your paintings. And that, to me, that is the excruciating thing, ladies and gentlemen. That is the excruciating thing. It's not the competition with one's fellow artists, because, as I say, that it really isn't competitive when you're in the middle of it, or you can choose not to get obsessed with the competitive part. But when you're sitting in a booth with your paintings behind you, it's pretty clear why you're there. I started offering things like buy a painting and get a cookie, but it didn't work. Oh, I will not do those events where you have to sit there with your paintings. And that's why I've never done Telluride, for instance. Next slide, Charles. This is Scuffletown Road, is what I called this. This is out in a ranch in at Plein, Texas, out in San Angelo. And this is a device I use quite a bit at Plein. You'll see you've seen most of these images are long horizontals. I really like the 1:2 aspect ratio. It is how we see as creatures. We are predators. We have eyes on the front of our heads. Lunch has eyes on the side of its heads. Predators have eyes on the front. So we see wide. It also allows for a real kind of narrative stance, because it's so panoramic. I think in a way, it's like Cinerama. It reaches around, and I really like the device of emphasizing light. That one side of the painting is light and it travels to darkness. I think it allows you can really play up the light hitting a surface in front of you, and really play up the coolness of the shadows. Let me check the comments again for a second. Oh, Laura Fisher Saxon says she tried to do 3 in one day for the latest paint out. Sunrise, midday, and sunset. A car blocked her view for the second one, but fun to paint with some wonderful painters. Exactly. That's the thing. It's the community. Let go of the competition. Think about the community. And part of why I've chosen these particular images is because each of these has a very strong, resonant memory for me of when I was painting these, or a story attached to the title. With Mortal City, with Dar, this is called Scuffletown Road because I was listening, while I was painting this, I was obsessively listening to a Texas songwriter. He's actually from Georgia, but is associated with Texas songwriting. Texas songwriter named Eric Taylor. And my favorite record of his is called Scuffletown. And this was just a ranch somewhere, but I called it Scuffletown Road, and Eric was terribly pleased, which was again an honor because he's a songwriter I admired so much. I actually have a story about driving. I was driving to the Publishers Invitational one year and picked up a hitchhiker, and I was listening loudly to Eric's Scuffletown CD in the car, and the guy who looked like he'd been rode hard and put away wet just sat there as I drove, and then he got to where he was going and got out. And as he got out, he turned to me and said, "Thanks for the ride, man, but that music you're listening to is seriously whooped up." He said the expletive, but I'm not saying it because I'm considerate of not all of my audience enjoys swearing as much as I do. But that charmed me greatly. And when I told Eric that story, he laughed and laughed and laughed. Sadly, he is no longer with us, but if you're looking for great singer-songwriter music, check out Eric Taylor. And the album is called Scuffletown. Next slide, Charles. Okay, and this is why I called it. I'm gonna tear up probably. This is why I called it "Don't Ever Tell Anybody Anything, Then You Start Missing Everybody." On the left is my friend Greg LaRocque, a wonderful plein air painter who I always was a little bit intimidated by because he was on the scene before I was, and had always done very well, and everyone liked him very much. And this is me, Greg, and Vlad Yeliseyev. I always have a hard time saying Vlad's last name. Both great painters. Vlad is you probably know, is a terrific watercolorist down in Florida. Does a lot of workshops. I highly recommend painting with him. And Greg, sadly, last year was rollerblading and had an accident and hit his head. He was wearing a helmet, but went into a coma and left us. Is no longer with us. And this was in 2016 or 2017 at Plein, Texas in San Angelo, and this was the quick paint. I remember my painting was called West Texas Waltz, which is named after a Butch Hancock song. And it was purchased by the San Angelo Museum of Art. I don't think I won, though. I think I came in second. I don't quite know why I'm standing in the middle. I think Greg won with his painting of Letty's boots. But this painting, I now, life is just these moments of hanging out with people or doing these things. And then you start putting together a slideshow and you realize that it's now a march of time going past. And there are these people who are not here anymore. So enjoy your time while you're here, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy your time while you're here. Enough mooning, Charles. On to the next slide. This is 2017. Hunter Below Schmid at the Laguna Plein Air. Many of you may know Jay and Mary Linda Stroke Camp in whatever beach, so Laguna Beach, in Laguna Beach. They are avid art collectors, and they have all of the beautiful, all the great American plein air painters of this and the previous generation. They have a Richard Schmid, and they purchased one of my little paintings. That's a little 8x10 down around my gut there. And they put it in their house underneath the Richard painting. And then they had an open house, and I came over and I got to see my painting below Richard's. And I looked pretty darn pleased, and I'll tell you, I was pretty darn pleased. Oh, that was an honor. And then here, once again, this is the final slide that I have. This is called Save the Barn. It was painted this year at the Cape Ann Plein Air. And again, I included it because I wanted to show the effectiveness of this device of light on one side, shadow on another side. If there's one thing I can impart to you, ladies and gentlemen, it's to try to find your own voice rather than painting like how everybody else does it. This device really, I find, a very effective way of telling a story. And I like the trope of it being reminiscent of photography. So this looks kind of like a blasted out glass negative. Again, I paint monochromatically when I'm in plein air just to keep things as simple as possible in terms of I can concentrate on the lighting effects, the edges, the composition, the drawing. I don't have to worry about chroma. It's a big relief that way. I'm going to go back to the big picture of myself. There we go. Now, a little bit more about plein air events. And I know I'm jumping all over the place today because of having to do this whole thing on my own. But keep in mind, plein air events exist for a variety of reasons. Some are the primary fundraisers for arts organizations. And that means that the arts organization, basically, puts you up, feeds you a couple of meals, and in exchange, then they have their gala. They invite the big donors in.
They get them liquored up, and hopefully, the donors buy a painting. Other plein air events are kind of labors of love of individuals in various towns. Some towns do them for to help kind of drive tourism. And I think if you're needing, nobody wants to lose money. You don't want to lose money when you go out and do one of these events. So I don't think it makes sense to paint to a prize, but do keep in mind what the audience is. In my experience, the audience at plein air events is not, they're not serious art collectors. They're supporters of the host organization generally. And consequently, I find that I've had the most success in terms of sales if you paint sort of, if you think about what people who would attend this would find a beloved site. That said, I'm immediately now thinking of various paintings I did that were anything but. But if there's a auto graveyard that has all kinds of neat shapes in it, yes, go ahead and paint the auto graveyard. But be aware that the people in that town may not think that auto graveyard is the coolest thing in the world. So in San Angelo, there's the first Hilton Hotel that's sort of the icon of downtown. The problem with that is everybody paints that. And the people of San Angelo do not need another painting of that. So you gotta slip it down the middle, you know. So paint what's beloved, but what's not too beloved. I've had good luck with the train station in San Angelo, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody loves the train station in the town. The other thing, the last thing I think I want to say is to just, no, it's not the last thing, it's the next to last thing I want to say. The next to last thing I want to say is I no longer look to these events to extend my artistic exploration. I do my artistic exploration primarily in the studio now. I go to these events and I'm trying to do the 2 paintings a day. I'm trying to exercise my eye-hand skill, my drawing skill. As I say, that monochromatic, taking the 3-dimensional full color world and reducing it to a monochromatic 2-dimensional surface, but working from life rather than working from a photograph, which is of course a real challenge. That's what I look for in why I do these events. I do it for camaraderie, and I do it to extend my skills. And then thirdly, it tends to be a decent paycheck. But I am not doing it with any illusions that doing these events really moves your art career that far forward beyond just the fact that you can do these events. You know, if you do well at Sonoma, word will get around and you might get invited to Door or whatever, you know. But in doing any of these, I would hope you can try to put aside the idea of the competition. Just, you know, hike your own hike. And as you do that, you'll develop this wonderful network of friends that I just feel so blessed in doing this little slideshow. There's so many people who are precious to me that I see or I recall from having done this. So I know that was a little disorganized today, but it's my first time doing this on my own as Betty Sue wings her way north. I thank you for joining us. I would love to leave comments, and I'd love to hear people's thoughts about doing these events, and we can revisit it again sometime in the future. You take good care out there, all right? We'll see you soon. I think we'll be here next week. I'll probably have a guest next week, so I've blathered quite enough.
Take good care. Bye-bye.